Reverend Tony, what do I say about him? He's got a military background. He's a politician. He's a lawyer. And he is a spiritual seeker who I don't know was sure he was seeking. But he was in the offices next door when we reopened this building. And he got to chatting with some people. And the next thing you know, he's in classes and then in ministerial school. And now he is our staff minister. So it has been such fun. I have pictures from the original Foundations class in my office. It's called the Phoenix class because it was our Phoenix Rising year when this all just started percolating for you. And it has just been a deep pleasure of mine to watch you unfold. So, with that background, he seemed like a perfect guest to speak on the month that our theme is freedom. Reverend Anthony Suarez.
Hello? Ready? Okay. Do you have this connected? You have to turn it on. No, I guess not. There you go. Yeah. There you go. Thank you. As you see, I don't do this usually. And I thought that because I don't get to do it usually, I like to be a bit provocative and try to stir inside you and all of us, although I know I'm preaching to the choir, as they say, inside. Let's look. Why was I attracted to science of mind? Science of mind. Mind does not mean brain. We're going to be talking about that because we're going to be talking about the differences between the practical applications of physiology and pain and what you believe. And that comes from the brain and action of the brain, but there's something different than the brain. It's called the mind. And what is the mind? It's not located in your brain. It's located in your consciousness. What's interesting about science of mind is Ernest Holmes, who himself was not an educated man, took the study of religions of the world and philosophies of the world and put together a teaching that this is the 1930s now, okay? This is just right after Einstein, all this stuff. He put together a theory, a teaching that combined both science and consciousness studies. Actually, the School of Ministry was called the School of Consciousness Studies. And they're out there, consciousness studies. So this is a very attractive teaching for those who both want to know the mysticism and the spirituality of their world, but also don't want to negate the actuality and science of the world. We don't want to repeat the Galileo's stories, right? Where science and the church and the religion were at clashes. Instead, we want to be able to confirm our faith with science. And science of mind does just that. It was remarkable to me how we can combine the metaphysical with the physical. And that is what attracted me to science of mind. I believed that my faith got stronger as a result in my believing that it was based on some facts as opposed to just because mommy told me. My mommy's here watching me, right? Mommy tells me to believe in God, but I had to have more. And that's why I began my studies. And I've studied all sorts of religions even before I got the science of mind. And I bounced around all the different religions. I was raised as a Catholic, and I went to Catholic undergraduate school. I went to Catholic law school, steeped in the tradition. And then after that, I bounced around evangelical systems, and I just didn't have that conjunction, that collaboration between science and metaphysics. So science of mind did that. and did it for me. So now I'm going to call upon you to do an examination of your faith, right? Because many people sit and listen to stuff and they say, I believe. I mean, out there in the world, there are people who say they believe in things. They believe in humanity. They believe in equality. But then they do totally something different with what they actually do. And so I'm going to ask you here today, do you believe? And do you really believe? And examine your beliefs. Now, let's go to, there we go. One of the hardest things to believe, one of the principles of science of mind was a question of health. Among the principles that we have, and in the next slide we'll talk the actual principle 11, believe that, and Holmes a quote from, use the thought of peace and the realization of a perfect presence. Know that in this presence there is no tension, there is no struggle, there is no fear, there is no sense of conflict. Know this until there comes to our own consciousness a deep, calm sense of peace and ease until every thought of pain is eliminated. Do the same in the case of fever. Treat until it is gone. Usually it will go like heat off a stone. Now, everyone says, I believe. But then, let me go to the doctor and give me, a million doctor pains. And every time what's wrong? The question I ask of you, do you really believe that actually what Holmes is teaching us actually is a practical? Now, we're going to be discussing the details between medical and science and metaphysical, what we do. But let's explore that. I want to use an example of how this may work. There used to be someone who was here, I won't withhold her name for privacy, but I used to pick her up and bring her here because she had infirmities that kept her in a wheelchair. And I would pick her up and bring her here, and she would talk to me about her infirmity, and I would talk to her about my infirmities, and particularly a case of diabetes that I have, that I suffer from. And so suddenly she challenged me, because I was always being positive with her. She would challenge me, and she says, well, Tony, if you believe that, how come you still have diabetes? And I have to look at her and say, why do I have diabetes? Why do I have diabetes if I believe? Why don't I turn my attention to diabetes and knock it out? Well, I had to tell her, well, there's a difference between a cure and dealing with the conditions of an illness. That's the difference. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The conditions of an illness as opposed to a cure are two different things, and Ernest Holmes didn't speak about cures. He spoke about dealing with the conditions of an illness. Because the illness has two components. It has the physical component of the illness and the psychological application of what happens to you when you're sick. Science of mind deals with the conditions of the illness. Your unhappiness that is caused by the illness is something you can control because that's in your mind. The unhappiness is in your mind. I recently took a trip to Europe. And in that trip, it was 6 weeks, so I had to really pack up with all this insulin that I had. And then what happens? At the end of 2 weeks, I lost my insulin. I left it in the hotel room, and now I was facing 4 weeks of no insulin. Now you have an option. Oh my God, I got to go home. I got to get back to my doctor. I have to find a doctor. I can't, I'm going to die. Could take that position. Or I can say this, this is the time to apply science of mind, okay? And you know what I did? Because I resolved that I was not going to allow my condition and my illness to stop me from enjoying this vacation. I'm not going to allow that. So then I had to turn my attention to defeating this condition in my mind. You know what I knew? Dr. Google told us. Just stop eating all the junk that you usually eat. I controlled my diet. I didn't need to have one insulin injection for the rest of the 4 weeks. Since then, I have reduced 24 pounds, and I have reduced my insulin intake by more than 70% of what I was taking before. So control of the conditions can control the physiology of your body as well. Principle 11. We believe in the healing of the sick through the power of the mind. We believe in the control of the conditions through the power of the mind. This is what I was talking to you about when Holmes was dealing with us. We may not be able to control a cure. Let me tell you, eventually I think we can. Because as you know, your brain and the condition of your brain releases endorphins, and it releases hormones that actually make you stronger, make you better, make you feel good. It all comes from the brain and chemical reaction of your brain, of which you control. So there's going to a point where I think you can. And where do we take some examples? I like, again, to the New Testament, the story that your faith has made you well in Mark and in Luke. And that's the story of a lady who was very ill. She suffered from release of blood, and she was ill. But she knew, or she felt that Jesus was coming through, and she had absolute faith that he was the healer, that he had received, healed others, and she believed that he would heal her. While Jesus was going through the crowd surrounded by disciples, all of which were men, right? She was trying to get to him, and she couldn't get to him. And then she fell on the ground, and she managed to touch his robe. And then the Bible says that she was cured. But Jesus felt that. Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And the disciples said, "No, this is all related, but I'm just making this stuff up. Sorry, right? This is related in the Bible, the Testament." And they said, no, we didn't touch you. You didn't touch. She said, "No, someone touched me." The lady then stood up, and she went to him, and she was cured. And what did Jesus say to her? He didn't say, "I cured you." He said, "Your faith has cured you. Your faith has cured you." She so believed in that he would cure, that she was, and then conditions were cured. Now, that's indicative of the strength of faith. Now, it's not just Christianity. What do the Buddhists say? Healing is viewed as a partnership between external medicine, doctors, surgeries, prescriptions, and internal medicine, faith, mediation, and mindfulness. Faith acts as the ultimate psychological support system, transforming an illness from a purely negative crisis into an opportunity for profound spiritual growth and mental purification. In the Buddhist philosophy, the mind is the forerunner of all physical experiences. Faith is considered a positive, clarifying mental factor that purifies the mind of negative emotions like fear, anxiety, and despair, which are known to exacerbate physical illnesses. So it is not just the Buddhist, it is not just the Christian, it is a consolidation, which is what's so great about the teachings of Ernest Holmes, that he synthesized all this stuff and put it all into a simple language and put it in his text about it. You can see this is not small reading here, okay? But it's here to give you a guidepost. It's not a Bible. He doesn't pretend to be a writer. He never pretended that science of mind would be a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a teaching. And so you have to really think about this. What did he say? Ernest Holmes says, "Belief is not just wishful thinking. It is a profound, unshakable recognition of truth. You do not beg or plead with God for healing. God is an immanent universal law, such as gravity, electricity. The law reflects back whatever you completely believe." Wow. That's some heavy stuff. A doctor can treat the body, but a spiritual practitioner works on the healing of the mind. Spiritual healing is not a miracle. It is the natural result of the right of alignment of human consciousness with the divine law. So, how does this work in the world? Again, words in a book. Apply it. Let's apply it. What do we know? We know that the brain releases chemicals, endorphins, and there are other drugs that allow you to cure yourself, ease the conditions of pain. We know. This is written in our annuals of the psychological reviews. It lowers the risk of cardiovascular disease. A betterment of the immune system. It fosters faster recovery after surgery, lower levels of chronic inflammation, longer life expectancy. And this comes out of the Annals of Behavioral Science. You could look it up, because that's what I did. Look it up. Reduces stress and hormone levels, and it alters brain activity in MRI scans. In school, ministry school, we actually take a course given by medical doctors, the MRI scans of people as they're thinking, as I show them pictures, you can actually see where the part of the brain is operating with positive thinking. You can see it, how it actually alters in real science. So, we know that this is practical, but there's more. There's more practical. Where does this healing problem come in? Which is why I challenge you. There's lots of stuff in our principles. The most difficult one to come up with is healing, and that's why I make this the challenge of today. Pain. No one likes pain. So with the pain, we start looking for some way of relieving the pain, and we start looking for drugs and other things outside, externally of us, to try to establish where that is. But what is pain? Pain is really a signal that your body is giving to your brain of our survival. Pain comes from fear. So, what do we know? Of things that we have seen. You can put it on YouTube and see it. Those people that lay on a bed of nails. I mean, would you lay on a bed of nails? Right? So I'm not doing that. Well, they believe, and they manage to do it. And mind you, there's an actual physical reason for why that can happen. So it's not a miracle. There's reasons why. If you sit on one nail, it'll go right through you. You sit on a bed of nails, it even out and it doesn't come out, there's no pain. There may be some, but you overcome it mentally. What about the people who walk on coals? They're walking across hot coals, and they manage to do it because they control the conditions in their minds. Then we have the situation of what's called phantom pain syndrome. Write it down if you have any doubt. The phantom pain syndrome comes out of the situation of people who have lost a limb, yet are still feeling pain from that limb that's no longer there. So it's not physically possible to have that pain. But it's psychologically. They've also had experiments where they've actually put a false, they block this arm, and they put another plastic arm in front of you so your eyes can see it, and then they start sensing it as if this arm was real. Then they stab the arm, and all of a sudden you feel pain. It's a phantom arms, and there's lots of psychological research on this. The result is that your mind is what's transmitting this pain. And it doesn't have to be real pain in order for your mind to perceive it. So now, what do we have? What do we know then about that? And of course, I talked about hypochondria. Every one of us here knows someone who says, "I've got a pain here, I got a pain here, I got a pain." And they're always in pain, constantly in pain, because they're always thinking about the pain. The relationship of pain and control. All of us we have fear. We don't want to have pain. We want to control the pain. We look for the control someplace else. So, what do we have? If you have the fear and you can control that fear, it'll change the physiology. When I was in the Army, they made us jump out of helicopters, maybe jump down, go rappelling off a wall. When you're looking down, you say, oh my God, I'm not going there. All right? But then you're forced to do it. When you're a Navy SEAL, they keep you in the pool until you're practically drowning so that you could experience the near death. I had to go into a gas chamber without a gas mask, right? Why? Because they wanted me to feel the fear of the gas mask so that I could overcome that fear. So this is the relationship of pain and here. What's the formula? If you have a belief that you can control the conditions, you will reduce your pain and relieve the symptoms of pain. That's the formula. All right? That's the belief. The question that I have for you, do you believe? Are you going to go home today and say, wow, I don't know? And if you don't know, then you don't believe. You got to believe. So what I want to do today, there's two things. I want to do a treatment today for all of us to really believe. Then I want you to join me in singing a song about I believe. And my wife and my daughter and granddaughter are here to watch me. They're saying, will he do it? Will he really do it? Right, Mom? My mom says, he's been practicing all week and keeping me up. Let's do the treatment. Let's get that banner moved. Spirit, creator of all things, those seen or unseen, known and yet to be known, that thing that I call God. I am one with all creation, perfect in that creation. I am a manifestation of that perfection. And I invoke that divine right to have the law applied to me and that my health is not an obstacle to my happiness. I am in gratitude for this knowledge. And I release these words into reality, knowing that it is so. And it is so, and so it is.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. If this episode supported you in any way, we invite you to stay connected. Listen again, share it with someone you care about, or simply carry what resonated with you into your week. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.